Welcome to the Sko Show, your Buffaloes podcast for those Colorado Buffaloes all over everywhere. I'm Sean Drotar. That's Peyton Kraft. Thank you for joining us. And the Buffaloes get a win over Delaware. Look, they were expected to beat Delaware. I get that. Maybe you're not super impressed. But obviously, after losing that first game of the season in a game they feel they probably should have gotten in Georgia Tech, they go ahead and they right the ship. They go out, perform well. They beat Delaware 31-7, but it took a little while to get going, Peyton.
Yeah, it did. And I mean, we were concerned about two quarterbacks, but incoming now we have three to decide. So we'll see what happens this week. But a lot of decisions to be made on who's going to be the actual starting quarterback for the Buffs.
Yeah, or if there's going to be one at all. It's so fascinating. We'll have to break that down. But obviously, for the Buffs, it took them a while to get the traction. After halftime, Delaware never scored again. So a good performance by the Buffs. We'll continue to break that down over the course of the game and let us know a little bit where it's going to lead. But we want to thank first and foremost our friends at Peckish. Without them, we don't have the Sko Show. Two different locations in Bellevue and 25, that Bellevue station there, and of course the one on the hill, the new one, by the way. I had a chance to broadcast from up there a couple of weeks ago. And yeah, 3 times the size of the original, but all the same wings that you love. 2024's Best of Boulder wings from 2024. And now you have the expanded pizza menu as well. And it's a much bigger space. You can see even a patio out back. And of course, if you just walk by on any given day on the hill, you're going to go in because it just smells amazing. So make sure you check out Peckish at either location. We're so excited to have them, as always, sponsor the Sko Show. But the Buffs get the win 31-7. As you brought up, Peyton, the story revolved around the quarterbacks, and maybe not nominal starter Kaidon Salter, not Julian Lewis. Juju makes his debut, but Ryan Staub. Deion Sanders said it after the game. Staub, don't trip. 7 for 10, 157 yards, 2 touchdown passes. Each of these guys got a couple drives, but the truth is they were the most effective under Staub. And now all of a sudden, when you and I talked about this last week, the idea that, well, if Julian Lewis comes in garbage time and looks really good, now we're going to have a quarterback controversy. That was only between 2. Now we're talking about 3, and you could make the argument. In fact, it'd be hard not to make the argument that after the performance of Staub, that he probably shouldn't take the starting snaps in next week's game against Houston.
Right. I mean, like you said, Staub was very efficient. He had 2 touchdowns. And Julian Lewis, who we were all excited to see, I mean, he didn't get that much playing time, but he was, 2 for 4, just 8 yards. He didn't have what we were hoping to see, the 2 touchdowns, 3 touchdowns that Staub did have. So now you get into that position. Well, Staub's been with the team longer than both these guys. If you don't remember, he was there when Shador Sanders was the quarterback. So he does have some chemistry built with this team. And I feel like that did show when he came into the game. Again, Julian Lewis, he's a freshman. Kaidon Salter, was a transfer. And for me personally, I would start Staub. He has that chemistry. He clearly proved not only to the team, but to the crowd. And again, fans are a big part of this game, why he should start. And I was surprised when they took him out after he converted on 2 touchdowns. I was surprised that Pat Shurmur then went and took him back out in the game.
The idea that Coach Prime talked about it after the game is to give these guys multiple drives in multiple situations. And yes, Salter came out and finished the game out in the fourth quarter. And it's not as if Salter was bad.
No.
13 for 16 for 102 yards, ran for another 25 and a touchdown. So it's not as if he was bad. But yeah, it's a weird spot. And I also think you brought up Pat Shurmur. I've had questions about Shermer's play calling in the past. I certainly do wonder about his ability to design an offense for a dual threat quarterback, something that I don't really recall a lot of history with. But in Staub's case, you have sort of a traditional drop back passer. And what I thought was really compelling about that was the idea that when he was back there, you talked to Peyton about the familiarity. Yeah, he was Sugar Sanders' backup last year. That means he knows at least some of the guys that were here that didn't transfer in, including Jordan Seaton, some of the linemen. That to me showed. They looked like there was reliability, some consistency. The pocket for Staub was really good. Now, of course, it's easier to create a pocket for a guy that's a drop back passer than someone who's moving around like Sugar Sanders did, and like Kaidon Salter and Julian Lewis to an extent do as well. But the offense simply just looked more efficient, more effective. It looked smoother. And I think even though it was 10 attempts for Staub, it really felt like a big shift in the way the offense functioned to the point where I'm not putting it on Salter, but if the offense had looked like it had in the drives with Ryan Staub, you might have won that Georgia Tech game. I'm with you. I don't know how you don't reward him by starting him against Houston.
Right. And again, it goes back to you don't want the offense having to figure out three different quarterbacks. They're three very different
Mhm.
quarterbacks. And to keep switching it out then ruins that momentum that one of the quarterbacks could be bringing. That was Staub this game. It may be Salter or even Lewis next game. But to keep switching it out eventually is going to catch up to you, especially as you start playing teams that aren't Delaware, right? We're playing Houston
Right.
this week. We play BYU, Utah. You're going to need to figure out how to make the offense click under one, maybe bring one in every now and then, but under a starter quarterback.
Yeah, that's where the big concern is obviously you can't make three quarterbacks work. I mean, we could get into it and try to explain why, but like just you can't make three quarterbacks work. You can barely make two quarterbacks work for the most cases, unless one is your starter and one's coming in, on an occasional like a play where it's a QB sneak and you have a particular guy that's going to run or something. So yeah, finding this is going to be problematic. And here you are now coming into week 3, now looking for a quarterback, and it's more complicated than it was before. The only thing that I look at, Peyton, that I think is interesting, and I wrote this on Twitter after the game on Saturday, is that whatever choice you make when this solidifies, and Julian Lewis has to remain the backup. He's either got to be the backup to Kaidon Salter or he's got to be the backup to Ryan Staub. And that's not necessarily for football reasons. Now we're talking about NIL and transfer portal and
Yep.
future of the Buffaloes reasons. If you demote the top quarterback prospect in high school to third string at any point, you might as well tell him, get ready to transfer. So they can't do that. So now the weird part is it would be heartbreaking for Kaidon Salter, who came into this season with 66 touchdowns through the ground and air over the last couple of years, tied with only Cade Klubnik of Clemson for the most in college football. But if you decide to start Staub, Salter has to go to 3. He has to, because now you're talking about where winning a game bumps into the business of college football. And it means that Julian Lewis's spot, I think given what we saw in this game, he shouldn't start over Salter or Staub, but he's got to be the backup for either one if you expect him to still be the future of the Buffaloes at the position.
Right. And I said the same thing after the game ended. You can't risk losing him to the transfer portal because again, freshman, teams are going to pick him up quick.
He's only 17, right? And I get it.
He knows.
He knows he's excited, but teams will trip over themselves to get him. So the Buffs have to make this really clear. Like, look, if you're ready at any point this season and we'll start you, we will. But the plan is still sort of the Arch Manning plan. You're gonna wait, you're gonna learn. And when you're ready, you're ready. But we also know that in 2026, it's yours. The problem now is if you are Julian Lewis, Ryan Staub's only a sophomore.
Yep.
So all of a sudden, how are you sure I get the kid? When it was Kaidon Salter with no eligibility after this year, you can sell it to Julian Lewis, say, well, it's all yours next year because he can't even come back. But if Staub becomes the starter, now you have to make sure you beat him, and you have to make sure that Julian Lewis is feeling really good about the idea. You're still the future, but we think Staub gives us the best chance to win games this year.
Right. And I completely agree. I mean, we've seen that Staub stuck around. He didn't jump into the transfer portal after last year, but Julian Lewis is a completely separate level that if he gets the opportunity and he remains that second, third string quarterback, he's going to jump into that transfer portal. And I think for CU, and again, goes back to recruiting and everything, you want to keep those star players. You want to get that face. Shedeur and Travis were the face of the Buffs last year. Julian Lewis is supposed to be our new face coming next year. I think you have to keep him second. Now it's between Staub and Salter. It's Salter's last year, so he has more experience. I think that's still who you're going to start. But if Staub keeps coming in, I think Houston will be a big test. If Staub comes in and he scores again consistently, you have to take that into consideration, and I would start him.
Yeah, and it's funny because there's also the possibility that everything we just said means nothing. And Deion Sanders looked at it and said, "Hey, we were going to try a bunch of quarterbacks, and Ryan Staub is one of the guys that stuck around, and he's been with us, and he's familiar, and we deserve he gets rewarded with some playing time. But maybe this was just We put you in versus Delaware, first year FBS team, and it's great. You played well, but we're not going to pretend that reinvents our entire system. It could be that by this time we're talking about it, we're like, I guess it was just a blip, right? I mean, that's still a possibility.
Yeah, and I think you're going to see it. They're going to have a completely different look on offense going into Houston. Houston's a completely different team. They have a great defensive line. I think you're not going to see the plays that we saw against a Delaware team, because against Delaware, they had the opportunity to throw three quarterbacks in. Oh, let's see what Staub can do. I think Houston, they're really going to have to evaluate which quarterback did the most. And I do think Salter is going to start for them, but they're not going to be just throwing in kind of necessarily those trick plays, those plays. Let's just bring a different quarterback in, because against Houston, you just can't do that.
The second game in a row for the Buffaloes, one of the really good signs, even though the last game, obviously against Georgia Tech, giving up 300 plus yards on the ground, was a disaster. The truth was that Jamal Haynes, who's an outstanding running back, was not a big part of that in many ways. It was Haynes King, the quarterback. In this case, in Delaware, Nick Minicucci, their quarterback, is not a runner. He did throw for 312 yards, but it was a lot of sort of, if you'll forgive the term, empty calories. But when you talk about the running game, Joe Silver ended up only with 11 carries for 47 yards as a team, 30 carries for 84 yards. So the Buffs defense against the run got a lot better. It is worth noting it was not Georgia Tech, it was Delaware, but you still want things to go in the right direction regarding that. So at least that felt like it was fixed up. But even some of the things in coverage were interesting to me, because even though Delaware only scored 7 points, there were some plays. Ja'Carry Kelly had a great long pass and a catch and a run. Phenomenal run after the catch. Juked more than a few Buffaloes. Fortunately, Ben Finiseth tracked him down from behind, knocked the ball out. That ended up being a turnover that kind of broke Delaware's back. But Kelly was effective. And Jake Thaw, their big-bodied wide receiver, was effective all game, running through Buffs tackles in the secondary, spinning around guys. There were some concerns there. There is, I think, some concern going forward that the Buffs secondary, even though you're pretty bullish on it, tackling's got to be a little more of a concern, because there were a few guys running free too often for a team like Delaware at Folsom Field.
Right, and kind of bring in the like time of possession, right? They pick up that run game, and against Delaware, they're going to maintain the clock, and normally who maintains the clock is going to maintain the scoreboard. And they let Delaware have 27 minutes of possession. Yeah. So it was pretty evenly split between a team that, like you said, first year in the FBS, if you split that time, another team is going to score a little more. And like you said, they had some great moments. They had the blocked punt, which helped, them as well. But you have to be able to stop the run game. And we saw it more in the second half, but the first half, we couldn't score. No one could score. Yeah. But against a team that you can't stop that run game, it's going to rack up some points.
Well, on the flip side of that, for the Buffaloes, things have gotten a lot better in the first two games. We'll see as they get into the meat of the schedule. But last year, we talked about this prior to the season, Peyton, the idea that the Buffs were dead last in rushing in the Big 12, 65 yards per game. I mean, that was dead last by 40 yards. The next worst was 40 yards better. Now, the bright side, Buffaloes have gone from 65 a game, and it is only 2 games, to 138 and a half. Now, don't go nuts about it, because that goes from dead last in the Big 12 to 4th to last. They are better than K-State, Baylor, and Oklahoma State, but this is the Big 12. Teams put the ball on the ground. This is a power running conference. And even the Houston Cougars get almost 200 a game. But still, on the bright side, the Buffs doing way better on the ground with mainly the same running backs that they had last year.
Again, 131 yards. Yes, great improvement. But a lot of teams are also putting up those numbers. You want to see it kind of get a little bit farther, especially in a run-heavy conference.
Yeah, you got to put it in perspective. You're like, wow, that's so much better for the Buffs. You're like, yep, it just barely gets you into the lower third that you were 40 yards behind dead last. I mean, that's terrible. But it is interesting. The new addition to Kalen Taylor, you brought him up right off the bat in the offseason out of Incarnate Word, 7 carries for 48 yards, kind of a water bug. Obviously, they have to get creative with the way they use him. You're not going to, I think they listed him at 160 pounds. You're not going to have this guy crashing through the tackles all the time. But it is interesting. Dallin Hayden hasn't played yet. Michael Welch, not effective in this game, 7 for 14. For the second game in a row, the Buffs' best running back was Simeon Price, 9 for 55 in this game with a long of 24. The Buffs had 7 offensive plays of longer than 20 yards. That's a good sign. And 3 of them in this game were on the ground. Price now in 2 games, 14 carries, 85 yards, hasn't scored yet. You're thinking, well, not a big deal, but 14 carries, that's an over six yards a carry average. I think you're going to see as the season goes along, unless somebody else bubbles up. I think the Buffs are pretty happy with the fact that Price can catch out of the backfield. He can run in between the tackles, and he's still got a little bit of shiftiness to get outside the tackles. To me, it's very much looked like in the first 2 games of the season, Simeon Price is their best running back. The question now is, as they get him more work, can he continue to look like that?
Right. And like you said, he hasn't yet scored, but then you have to remember CU has quarterbacks that can run the ball also.
Right.
Salter uses his feet. We haven't seen Lewis quite do it yet, but even Staub. So if they get close, 10 yards in, you may not see the running back running it because you have the quarterback with that option to go score.
Yeah, and you saw that with Salter with the touchdown against Delaware as well. But obviously, that's something better. Receiving was good. Welcome to the chat. Sincere Brown shows up with the 4 catches, 120 yards. DeKalen Taylor, by the way, also ends up looking really good in the early parts of this season. And in Brown's case, his first touchdown, he and Staub hooked up very effectively. But DeKaler, again, 4 for 49 and a receiving touchdown. So now you're starting to find out who their weapons are. And that's pretty exciting. The next part is figuring out, what to do with the quarterback. But at least things are moving in the right direction. And I guess the silver lining would be if you have 3 people who you feel you could play, that's good. That's good. Right. Because injuries happen, situations, that's good. But you are right when you pointed out a couple times earlier in this program, and you're 100% right. It is too difficult for the rest of your offensive teammates, especially in the offensive line, to know how to block, for receivers to know exactly what they need to do with each quarterback. It's too much to ask of the other 10 players on the field. And that's where it's incumbent on the coaching staff. For me, this is Deion Sanders' first real legitimate challenge as the coach of the Colorado Buffaloes, because we knew he took over at what had been a 1-win team. We knew about the talent he had, but now we have to watch in today's modern era. How do you keep your quarterback of the future happy while still finding a way to cobble together enough wins in a transition year to get to a bowl game? That challenge for Deion Sanders as the where the guy the buck stops at, right? The head coach. Mm-hmm. This is the first major challenge that I see he's had to deal with, at least on a football side, as the head coach of the Buffaloes. And I'm fascinated to see what happens next, because I can't tell you I know.
Yeah, and same here. I don't think really anyone knows and has a decisive look on who's going to start and who's not. It's still up in the air. But you said a bowl game. CU's schedule this year is really hard when you look at the teams that they're playing. Coming up again, this was kind of your easy win, as everyone was saying, but you go forward and there's some tough teams that you need to beat to get into a bowl game, let alone hopefully, get past that number. But I think this year is going to be, I don't want to say it's the hardest for Deion Sanders, but it's definitely, he's going to have to make a lot more decisions than when you had Travis and Shedeur. You always could rely on them, but this year you have to have better coaching, in a sense of making sure everyone knows where they stand and what's going to be played.
Yeah, it's not really an on-field thing. It's an off-field thing. It's a big picture thing. It's how do you convey that to a 17-year-old right. who has been told probably since he was, Pee-wee, you're the man, we're going to make sure we move heaven and earth for you, and for the Buffs to be able to do that. Fortunately, at least you've seen that happened, like I mentioned, in Texas with Arch Manning, and everyone in Texas wondering every single down, how come it's not Arch Manning? And here you are. But that part will be fascinating. And you are right, because the over-under in Vegas on the Buffs wins is 5.5. So basically they believe that, if you were to take a whole bunch of seasons, they wouldn't make a bowl game more often than they would make a bowl game. Mm-hmm. And so that's where I think this decision is fascinating, because this is a road game against Houston, a team that we know can put points on the board. And it's a really important one. There is a big difference in a limited college football season of starting 2-1 as opposed to 1-2, especially if you think you can get over Wyoming at home on the 20th. Mm-hmm. All of a sudden, now you could be looking at a 3-1 start. And then that loss to Georgia Tech is like, well, you know what? A couple of good teams played. Somebody's got to win. Somebody's got to lose. It was a close game. You can live with that. But if you end up 2-2, or worst case, maybe you blow it against Wyoming, 1-3 when entering conference play, and then you got BYU. This can be over earlier than people think.
Right. Exactly. And we play Wyoming. That's not an easy
It's
team
not a
to
gimme.
beat.
I mean, they're going to.
Like,
It's a change for them. It's a game the Buffs feel they should win,
right.
but it's not a gimme. And
Mhm.
you're looking 1-3 and going, how are you going to make a bowl game now? And you got BYU, TCU, ranked teams in Iowa State, Utah, Arizona State dropped their game, so
Mhm.
obviously they fall off. But they were considered among the preseason favorites to win it. Then I think 2 games in, I'm not writing them off either. So yeah, it becomes really difficult. So the idea of making a bowl and keeping the momentum going, these next 2 games matter a lot. And now you're stuck with a quarterback controversy. It's not ideal, even though you won with it.
Yeah, and like you said, one quarterback's great. Playing two is a little iffy, but no one really ever talks about, well, what if you have three quarterbacks? And that's because it just doesn't
Nope.
happen. And that's why you need to be able to break it down to
Yeah. And in today's day and age, what that means is one of them's leaving. Remember,
right.
pre-transfer portal, you just kind of found a way to manage it because they're students and that they were going. But now, any of them, who knows? You could have Staub and Lewis end up leaving. Who knows how it shakes out? So this will be a fascinating challenge, and they have to manage all this while still trying to go win a football game. So it will be fascinating to see how this goes. And who knows? Maybe we're making a mountain out of a molehill, and it turns out Ryan Staub just got his shot because it
Mhm.
seemed the kind of game in which when they put Julian Lewis in for a drive, they were like, yeah, he's definitely not ready to start. We're glad we got him some time. But hey, while we're at it, we feel we got these guys, especially when they put Staub in for that final drive in the first half. And it would have been very easy to just say, we're just going to, run the clock out and take it to halftime, readjust. But obviously that they get it done on that very, very quick drive. They get the touchdown. And then all of a sudden you have to bring Staub back out. They look really good. And it's a different narrative, but it very well could be that, hey, Staub knows he's a backup, and that's the reality of it. But we'll find out. It becomes hard at times to parse Coach Prime because when he has guys that he loves and likes and appreciates,
Mhm.
it's hard to tell which ones he's thinking, oh wow, he's going to just change everything because he loved the performance and loves this player. But sometimes it's not that easy. This is where we learn a little bit more about Deion Sanders as the personnel manager, as
Mhm.
opposed to just guys moving in and out. And it also, as you mentioned, what does that do to Pat Shermer? What does that do to the play callers? What does
Mhm.
that do to having to, you can't look at the situation if you're Shermer and go, well, the calls I'm going to make for Staub are going to be vastly different than what I'll make for Salter. And that'll be even different than what I make for an inexperienced kid in Lewis. So you're asking your offensive coordinator on a game week, if you're planning 3 quarterbacks with the different skill sets and experience, it's just asking too much. So it will be fascinating to see where it shakes out. But following the win, good energy coming out of it. It took a while for the Buffs to get going, but that they shut the Blue Hens out in the second half. They do what they're supposed to do. 1-1, 2 games in at this point. You look at the Buffs, and are they ahead of expectations for you? A little bit behind them, or just about what you expected?
Just about what I expected. Again, you lost those big names. No one really knew going into the season what the transfers were going to do, what the quarterback controversy was, which is still a controversy right now.
Worse now.
Yeah, worse now. I think I was a little more set back in the first game than I was now, but they're still right where kind of I thought they would be at. Nothing great. 1-1. That's great to be at. Again, first test on the road this week, so we'll see kind of what shakes out with that.
Yeah, I'm with you. I quite frankly thought they played a little better against Georgia Tech than I expected. They should have been able to cash in those early turnovers, and maybe they would have gotten a win. But if they would have gotten a win, I wouldn't have been sitting here saying, "Oh yeah, I told everybody." I would have been able to say, "Hey, I was wrong. I thought they'd lose that to Georgia Tech rather handily, and I'm happy to be wrong, and I'm excited that they won." But they were a little better than I thought on the whole against Tech than I was expecting. They were a little underwhelming, quite frankly, especially in the first half against Delaware. So I look at him like, yeah, okay, that's fine. But yeah, the quarterback situation will be fascinating. It's all anyone's going to talk about. But there are other things that are really, really good. Wide receiver again is deep. You have good running back performances. Taylor, the new transfer, looks really good. I think Simeon Price looks good as well. And keep an eye. He only had the one catch, and they weren't able to hook up again. But keep an eye on Zach Atkins, number 85, tight end, back at the black and gold game. I remember up in the booth looking at that. I wrote his name down a few times. I think the Buffs are going to try to find a way to incorporate Atkins more and more into the offense. If they can get a tight end involved, especially for guys like Salter or Lewis. That could be really effective. Go look at this weekend in the NFL. Look at the performance that Daniel Jones had with the Colts, the guy that's kind of known as, we don't even know what he is. You get him a good tight end in Tyler Warren. Didn't take that very long for them to get any synergy. Just took one game. Warren goes off for 7 catches, 76 yards. Not a shock, obviously, given the way he was considered coming into the league. But yeah, if you can get an actual tight end into this offense, that to me is the next step behind finding a quarterback, of course. But if you can get Atkins involved, get a tight end, now all of a sudden you have a lot of options, and it opens everything up for everybody else.
Yeah, and it's kind of, again, it's all going to lead back to this quarterback issue that we're having. But players start to develop chemistry with other players. If Salter goes in and he does start finding and building chemistry with a tight end, then I'd say, well, now you have that extra, person on the game that can help you out. But if Lewis can't build those relationships, then you also look at that as well. And I think the first quarterback, not only to prove that they can score points, but is starting to build chemistry with the team, which we saw in Staub, is then who you try to start.
Yeah, I mean, it will be fascinating. Buffs have to decide between 3 different quarterbacks. But if you go to Peckish at either of the locations, Bellevue Station or up on the hill, you don't have to actually pick. You can get any 3 sauces you want. You can go get 9 sauces, like whichever you want. You get all of them, so you don't have to worry about that. Put whatever toppings you want on your pizza. New pizza menu, it's expanded there. All of the great wings that you expect. So many sauces. Well, I'm a hot sauce guy, to the point where not quite tears coming to my eyes, but not far from it. Like I want it hot, hot, hot. And I can get that at Peckish, but that's not for everybody.
Yeah, I'm more of a sweet, like kind of honey, sweeter. I like buffalo, but yeah, the ones that bring tear to your eyes, that's a no.
Yeah, I don't know. Something wrong with me up here, but I'm one of those guys. I'm like, no, I got to test myself and get the hot one.
Prove yourself.
Yeah, but you're right. Sweet chili, the honeys, the bourbon, like so many different options. And all the pizzas, everything that Peckish brings, like we mentioned, 2024 Best of Boulder for the Wings in the new location on the hill, 3 times the size. We're going to be excited to go up there a couple times this year as well and do this show again. It was a blast to do it right before the opener, and we will do it again. So thanks to Peckish for bringing us and bringing you the Sko Show. Make sure you check them out. And if you're not in Boulder, that's okay. I-25 in Bellevue in the Tech Center, right at that Bellevue station, easy to get to, just a couple minutes off of I-25 and the menu. You get all of the same stuff. Byron and his team do a terrific job, and he is at both of those places all the time to make sure that they're all running. You go to Peckish, you get Peckish. Whatever location you get Peckish. And we know the Buffs love it, and we think that you will love it too. Official dining partner of the Colorado Buffaloes. We will be back at it later in the week as we take a look. We'll put the Delaware in the rearview mirror. We will hopefully find out a little bit more clarity on the quarterback situation, and then we will look towards the first road game of the year against Houston as you start to look at what it will look like in the Big 12, and it will be a terrific opportunity for the Buffs if they take a win. Like we said, I know it doesn't seem that much, but 2-1 with a win over a conference rival. That's a big difference from 1-2. A big game coming up for the Buffs against Houston. So Peyton, before we let you go, by the way, give us the scene here, because you're hosting the watch parties for the Buffs down at number 38. Home or away, if you can't be at Peckish, you can't be on the hill, you can't be at Boulder, you can't be at Folsom. You want to be at number 38 in Rhino, because not only is it an amazing place to watch a game, they have a freaking jumbotron in the back. Legitimately, the deck holds, I kid you not, 800 people, and they have a jumbotron. So if you want to watch a Buffs game, you want to catch the one that Peyton's hosting for you down at number 38.
Yeah, no, number 38, that is the place to be. They have multiple TVs. And again, outside you have the I can't tell you how just massive this screen is. It's been nice out lately. Come enjoy. You can bring your dog. That's the best part. So watch the game with your dog, your friends, grab something to eat. We do a lot of fun giveaways. We gave away some tickets to the BYU game last week. And then, of course, you can win some really fun autographed prizes. So I'm always there. People are always there enjoying, celebrating the Buffs. So definitely come on down and check it out.
Yeah, make sure you check it out. Number 38 in Rhino, of course, the home of the new Mile High Sports studio there that I usually record Mile High Sports today with Nate Lundy every single weekday. So come check it out, and we'll make sure we'll have a show for you there. Go enjoy some time with your fellow Buffs and check it out. But that will do it for us this time. We'll get back later in the week. We'll take a look at the Houston game in detail. She's Peyton Kraft. I'm Sean Drotar, but like all of you, we finished the show the same way.
Sko
Buffs!